Miami Heat Zone podcast. We're pushing to 6,000 subscribers. Make sure that you guys hit that subscribe button, and thank you for all the support. Make sure that you guys go to Amir's channel, Team to Beat Miami Heat. Make sure that you go to his platform, follow him on Twitter, and subscribe to his YouTube channel. Today we have my boy Zach from Clutch Point. Zach, before we begin, just plug some of your work. I know that you do great work over there at Clutch Point, so please plug that in for the people.
Definitely, yeah. Obviously, you can find me at clutchpoints.com. You click on the Miami Heat tab, you'll see all my work there. Obviously, Twitter at Zach Weinberger, Weinberger, or excuse me, X, as they call it, but some people refer to Twitter still. You find me there, Instagram, you'll see all my work there. So, yeah, definitely check it out.
Got you. So since you cover the Miami Heat, and once again, thank you for coming on the show. How do you feel exactly about all this Jimmy Butler stuff? Who is really to blame? Is it Jimmy? Is it Pat? Can you blame both? Like, what exactly do you think is really bothering Jimmy Butler right now?
Yeah, just to answer the blame one, again, I hope it's not a cop-out answer, but there's definitely some blame on both sides here, and listen, call me naive. I thought the relationship would work out. I know that Jimmy had these sort of troubles in terms of how he exited teams, whether it be Minnesota, Philadelphia, Chicago. But it just seemed like a perfect match between him and Pat Riley and just the culture and what everything represented, the strong-willedness. But really, maybe it was too strong-willed to a fault, possibly, and just kind of what's been happening here. Um, do I understand Jimmy wants to have commitment from his team? Sure. Do I understand that a team might not want to commit those type of resources, over $50 million, to a player that's aging and is not available all the time? I understand that as well. Do I agree that he should have said, keep your mouth shut? Like there's a lot of things here that I just don't particularly agree with. But at the same time, again, do you want to pay 50 million to a guy that's going to be, close to maybe 38? But again, he's a great postseason performer. So it's like, it's a back and forth here. I was hoping that at least they would play the season out and then they would solve this by the end of the season. Again, he has the player option. He either opts in or he opts out. So it seems like he's at the point where he's just going to do what he needs to do. He's going to do his job until he gets out of here. And the stuff on the court is definitely showing. But again, the game, against the Nuggets, he was second in scoring. And then the other night, 8 points against the Spurs. So, yeah, no, this is going to be an interesting situation to see how it folds out, especially as we approach the deadline on February 6th. And then if not afterwards, we'll see what happens then. But it's definitely been an interesting situation, to say the least.
Yeah, go ahead, Amir.
I mean, yeah, similar kind of cop-out answer. Like, who's to blame? I mean, you could look at both sides of the coin. The front office had their miscues, and Jimmy Butler obviously hasn't made it easy on the Miami Heat. He's kind of had an MO with, not getting the contract that he wanted and making a fuss about it and forcing his way out of multiple teams. So you can look at the blame on both sides, but I think the biggest thing here, though, is Jimmy wants his contract. There's all these other like little tidbits that are going to come out, obviously, from Jimmy, from the Miami Heat. But the biggest thing is the Miami Heat have a formula, essentially, whether the fans like it or not, but they typically don't pay their aging star. And they didn't do that with Shaq. He won a championship with the Miami Heat, right? In his, 4 seasons total with the Miami Heat or 5, whatever it was. It wasn't too long. Dwayne Wade, obviously, like, that's not apples to apples in this scenario, right? We drafted D Wade. He's our franchise best player of all time. He won 3 championships. It's not apples to apples, but Pat and Mickey don't pay folks for past performances. They pay them while they're in their prime for what they've done and reward them. D Wade, again, different scenario because he had to take a pay cut to get, Chris Bosh and LeBron to sacrifice to get those championships. But Jimmy hasn't won a championship with this Miami Heat team. We gave him a max contract for his contributions after the bubble. We did give him an extension. And they don't want to pay him for what they think they want to pay him for what they think he would do, which is probably $30 million a year, maybe, or whatever it may be. Something like a DeMar DeRozan kind of contract that you saw he got with the Sacramento Kings, right? 25, 30 million a year for 3 years, like a 3-year, 90 million, 3-year, 100 million, because they want to base it off of what they think you're going to do. And he's 35 going on 36. He's missed 20 plus games every year. So I guess you could blame the front office for thinking that way, right? And putting them in this position. But yeah, I don't know. The blame can go both ways, obviously, in my opinion.
Yeah, but Zach, like, you don't really just think that it really comes down to his work ethic. I mean, listen, like if you're making $48.8 million, Pat Riley never said he wasn't going to pay him. All he just said was, "We'll talk about it later." You know what I'm saying? And like especially when you look across the NBA, there's no team out there that can even afford to pay him unless you're like a tanking team. And why are they going to give Jimmy Butler all that money at 35, 36 years old? You see what I'm saying? So it's like I just don't understand why he's really beefing when I mean, listen, you're also pretty close to the team. They've accommodated him in so many ways. They gave him 150 plus $1 million after the bubble. We've heard about some of the special privileges that he gets that no other, big stars that came here ever had. But just moving on to Terry Rozier, why do you think Terry Rozier has not really worked out for the Miami Heat?
Oof, yeah, I mean, again, I thought that would work more, maybe not to the fullest extent, but I thought it would work a little bit, and it really hasn't. I don't know what it is. Obviously he's been used to being the focal point of an offense, especially with his time in Charlotte, and then obviously they transitioned into the LaMelo Ball era for them. And now he's really not close to the first option at all. So I think that's been a little bit of a struggle where like he's not getting the volume. And in the small sample size we're seeing of him getting that volume, whether it be off the bench or the time he started, it's been really bad. So, yeah, no, it's been puzzling. And that trade, just, especially trading a first round pick and everything like that, it just really ended up being a really bad trade for them. So, again, maybe we'll hear about some rumblings about that closer to February 6th. We'll see. But yeah, no, it's been interesting. And again, like the Heat are dealing with a couple different things. You mentioned the Butler stuff, and then obviously we're talking about Terry Rozier here. So, again, I remember the times where in the beginning of the season, we're like, okay, Tyler and Terry, that's going to be the dynamic duo backcourt, and there really hasn't been that at all. Hero's been great. Rozier has not. So, yeah, again, I'm not sure what happened there, but I feel like it's trending towards a time where they're going to try to deal him off. That's purely speculation on my behalf. So we're gonna see what happens with there. But obviously, as you can tell from the results have not been pretty. Even though again, last game he had 20 something odd points, but it's been sort of a rare effort from there.
Go ahead, Amir.
Same question. Terry
No,
Rozier.
go ahead. No, bro. Go ahead and ask your question.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So, yeah, I'll ask this to both of you guys. So, speaking of a dynamic duo, so Terry and Tyler, obviously, they had a good first week of the season, I think, or so. But obviously, that's gone downhill since, and only Tyler has obviously elevated and has been consistent and available, which is huge. But speaking of a new dynamic duo, Zach, so we finally got to see Kalel Ware and Bam play on the floor together for the first time, and there's two stints during that game where they saw the floor together. And I think defensively, we saw a very positive combination. Obviously, there they also did really well offensively too, as well. They had a huge run, but I think it might be clunky, perhaps. Who knows? Maybe that's why Spo hasn't really put them on the floor together because of the offense. I think he even said in his the post game that the offensive piece will figure it out, but defensively, like he really liked how they held the Spurs to like 11 points in the second quarter. So, what are your thoughts on that duo? Do you think moving forward, Spo is going to continue to try to get them on the floor together?
And that's interesting. Again, fans have been asking for this since he got drafted, Kalel. So I mean, and that's always been the plan. Like I know people were sort of like, again, my mentions were always flooded. Whenever Spo would answer a question about Kalel and Bam together, or just Kalel, people say play Bam at the 4, play Kalel at the 5. Like it's always been a thing. That was always a long term plan. They were working with that behind the scenes for sure, and that's what Spo said. And I don't even think that's a way for fans to be like, we should have done this earlier. Like I genuinely think it was not something he was just like, let's put them together. Like definitely being planned on. I think it's more so like, he's really of the belief that you got to earn your minutes, especially if you're a rookie. So whatever, that's the coach speak. I understand it. It really worked in this game. I do wonder if it was a matchup thing because again, when you're facing a guy like Wembanyama, like Bam can only do so much. He's a great defensive player, but that size can sometimes be, sort of overpowering. So you give another 7-footer in there, you plays Bam at the 4, and let's see what happens. And again, they were struggling on offense before, and they really turned up a notch because all that attention that they were getting to having such huge size there in terms of the front court, it resulted in Tyler and Duncan really benefiting from that. So I think that this is going to be a great looking lineup in the future. Now, again, will Spo start where tomorrow night? I don't think so. I think Spo's the type of guy where like he'll bring him off the bench and we'll see how it happens, how it transitions. So I don't think he's going to do it just yet, but I feel like we're trending towards that direction for sure. I think Ware starting the second half was huge. And he was just like, okay, if it's working, let's not just kind of like ruin this momentum. So it's interesting because when he did that, it was really great because people were not focusing on Butler the whole time anymore. It was like, okay, now we're seeing this new sort of direction here, and it made things really exciting. They were on like a 36-12 run, like from the second to third quarter. And again, it just sort of transit when they were on the floor together, Bam and Ware. So it's gonna be great. And again, like you said, offensively, they're gonna have to figure it out still. Because Bam is kind of going back to the four where he really was. That's his true position. They've been a small team forever, so it's going to be really interesting. I've been asking for it. I know fans have been asking for it. We saw it. We'll see. I don't think he's going to trend towards it immediately, but we'll see what happens. Again, Portland is a big team. They got Donovan Clingan out there, so maybe we'll see it again. But yeah, no, it's definitely that's one of the more exciting aspects of the Heat this season for sure.
Now, how do you feel about Tyler Herro being an all-star? I know that like the Boston Celtics, they have a lot of guards. Like the Cavs, they have a lot of guards. So how do you guys feel about Tyler Herro possibly making it to be an all-star? I definitely think that he deserves it because without him, I think that we definitely be like probably like the 12th seed because there's so many games where if we didn't have his offense, I don't know where that would come from.
I think for sure he should be an all-star. And again, the numbers, the one thing I've been wanting to see was consistency from Tyler Herro. I think that's sort of the one aspect that I was sort of kind of being a little bit critical on throughout his career here, especially these past couple seasons. And injuries have been a part of it too. He only played like 40 or 42 games last season. But listen, Pat Riley said he called him fragile a little bit. He used those words, and Tyler Herro took that as a challenge. He bulked up. He got the buzz cut, and that sort of was a symbolization that, like, okay, I'm going to go into the season really working well. And again, the offense was changed a little bit. Spo was really prioritizing deep threes and also shots within the paint. And if you look at the shot chart for Tyler Herro, it is drastically different from this year compared to previous seasons. So he's been really benefiting off the new offense. Which I feel like is part of like maybe Jimmy's sort of qualm here in terms of the role within the team as well. He's sort of talked about that as well. But it's really benefiting him, and I think he deserves it. He's not only just doing stuff in the scoring department; it's playmaking, it's the efficiency from deep, it's the assist. Again, he's just kind of doing it all. So I think he deserves it. Now, what I don't think he's getting the respect from the league in terms of all-star voting. I think even in the fan returns, he was like 10th, I believe. So yeah, I will see. I hope he does because again, I think he deserves it. It's a huge leap for him. So for sure, for me, he definitely deserves to be an all-star.
Yeah, it's like he played 42 games to your point last season. He's played all 41 games, and so he's already at his mark basically when he plays tomorrow, which is huge for us. So availability was the biggest issue, and he's never played more than 67 games. That's the most he's played, which is pretty bad for a young player. So I think the biggest thing he is showing is that he's not fragile, to your point. He's staying healthy. He's taking care of his body. And I mean, some of his injuries have been fluky in the past. So I don't think I always say he's not maybe necessarily injury prone. He's prone to injury because a couple of them have been kind of fluky. And he also was getting hurt doing that floater, which is basically like he rarely does it now. He does it like 1 out of 5 games. You'll see him actually do that floater where he jumps up high and has landed on people's ankles. Like in the Memphis game last season, he landed on Triple J's foot and missed 30 games because of that or whatever it was. So we see him getting to the rim a lot more, which is great. He's obviously shooting very efficiently from 3, to your point. I think he should be an all-star, and I'm hoping he makes it. I know players like Cunningham and other guys are getting more of the spotlight. LaMelo Ball, who's a great player on a crappy team. I'm not a big fan of LaMelo, honestly, right? Like he's like, I don't think you build around him. I mean, he could be maybe like a number 2 option, but I don't see him as like a franchise cornerstone that's going to help you win. But I hope he can get to the All-Star bid. But my last question for you, Zach, though, before we hop off. So Windhorst today or yesterday was talking about, and Mark Stein were talking about how a lot of teams are now coming up that could facilitate a 3 to 4 team trade for Jimmy Butler, like the Raptors. maybe the T-Wolves, or who knows. Like the Bucks obviously have shown interest, even though Jimmy is going to say the Suns. That's the only team that seems like they will give him an extension next season, right? So I think that's the main reason why he wants to go there, because he's trading one average team for another average team. It's not like he's going to a top contender if he goes to the Phoenix Suns. So, but there's been all this speculation that since his return, it's a big distraction, and the Miami Heat do want to trade him sooner than later. We're just not getting any good offers, right? And so Pat doesn't have that urgency right now. But what is your thought in terms of Jimmy getting traded by the deadline? Do you think, like, what percentage would you give it? Do you think he's going to get traded before the deadline because we have like 17 days or 18 days? Do you see a world where we trade him in those 18 days and we just say, fine, this is good enough? Or do you see him potentially being that kind of distraction, playing like he has been for the rest of the season, and then either walks away without picking up the option, or he picks up the option and does like a sign and trade? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, in terms of a percentage, because Pat in the front office, they're not the type to be like, get scraps. They want to at least achieve one of the few things in terms of a trade, which is to get expiring contracts of players that could compete for us, uh, or some draft picks need to be involved. They don't want Bradley Beal. That sort of seems to be the roadblock here, in terms of a trade, and reports have also been saying this, which is why you need a three team or 4 team trade to kind of facilitate something like you mentioned. Um, that's why, like, to me, I feel like personally, and again, speculation, like, I think he's going to be here past February 6th, but at the same time, I think it was interesting when Pat released that original statement about how they're not trading Jimmy Butler, and how they don't want the distractions to really get to the team. But every time Jimmy Butler's on the court, it seems like it's a distraction. Not because he's acting differently towards players. I generally don't believe he has any beef towards players. I know I see that on social media and stuff like that. But obviously when everybody talking about the Heat is really referencing Jimmy Butler, I don't know if the team and Pat really likes that, so maybe they will move on sooner rather than later. But again, like, I think for Phoenix sake, I feel like they might think that, okay, this sort of build that we tried to do is not working. They think that maybe Jimmy Butler is their last ditch effort to possibly kind of have a resurgence. So maybe they'll find some way to do it. So, like, it's so weird. Like, it's kind of like, for me, a 50-50 toss up in terms of he's going to be out of here by February 6th or not. Personally, if I have to lean away, definitely he's on the team by the deadline. But again, like, it's interesting, kind of, how everybody is filming Jimmy Butler during the player introductions. I'm one of them. You want to see how he's acting towards players. And again, it seems like that when he's on the bench, people are overanalyzing his sudden movements. People are analyzing what people say after the game. Like Bam, during one of his post game quotes, the one that got big on my page was when he mentioned the word joy. As soon as he mentioned joy, I was like, okay, is that a reference or is that just him saying the word? So you're kind of having these thoughts. Everybody's having the thoughts. So that's going to be around the organization until he's moved. So does Pat want that? That's sort of my question. But Pat also wants to compete. It's a very unique situation that we're in here. But if I have to lean away, I think he's going to be here past the deadline. But we'll see. Again, I see both ways. So they just don't want to get something. They don't want to trade that's going to screw them over. They want to help themselves in some way. And I feel like for a franchise player like Butler, you want to get something at the very least. So we'll see if he makes it past the deadline. He mentioned that he'll use his trade player option as a maneuver. He'll opt in and sign and trade, all that sort of stuff. So we will see what happens.
Yeah. Do you think also, like, one last part to that? Do you think the Miami Heat are actually playing ball with Jimmy Butler and are actually waiting to see if they can get that third, that fourth, that fifth team to get a better package? Because again, they need to win now, because if we don't make the playoffs, then our 2 lottery picks that we owe to Charlotte and OKC become unprotected. And then without Jimmy, and if we don't get a good trade package for Jimmy Butler, if Bam or Herro go down next season, we're going to be the 10, 11, 12, or 13 seed. Like, we're going to be very mediocre. We're already a play-in team when we had Jimmy, Tyler, and Bam Adebayo. So do you think they're actually playing ball with Jimmy, trying to actually get him to the Suns? Or do you think they don't give a shit and they're like, we're just trying to find the best package, right? Because we do want expiring contracts, a team that might be willing to give a first round pick, or give us a blue chip prospect like the Sixers got or the Clippers got for Paul George, right? Like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, they never thought the Thunder never thought that he would become an MVP kind of guy, right? His rookie year, he was only averaging like 10 points a game with the Clippers. He obviously showed that he had upside, but not this upside. So we at least want something like that, right? Hypothetically. But anyway, do you think we're trying to be nice with Jimmy to say, look, thank you, even though you're like building all this drama now, right? And demanded a trade in good faith. Let's just try to still get you to the Suns. Or do you think we're just not able to find a package with any team at this point?
I think it goes hand in hand. I don't see like them trading Jimmy to the Raptors. I just don't see it, or trading him somewhere he doesn't want to be. I do think that they're going to find a way to bring him to the Suns, but to the second option, they want to get something in return from another team or from the Suns that's going to help them. Because, like you said, I think that's something that that's being talked about. Like those two picks are going to change drastically if they don't make the playoffs. If they have Jimmy on the team, they feel like, okay, we'll get to the playoffs, and we'll see what happens. Again, they think that they can contend, with this lineup. Whether people agree or disagree with that, that's what they think. So they're going to be like, okay, if we don't get a package we like, we're just going to run with this and see what happens after the season. But like you said, I think it does play hand in hand. I think that Jimmy's going to get to the Suns, but they're just not going to get scraps for it. And that's pretty much it. They're not going to be like, okay, we'll take, just scraps for a player that's took us to, to 2 finals, almost to 3 off a 3-point shot in that one conference finals against Boston. So again, it's just like, I wonder, but again, like Brian Windhorst said, to your point, like talks are ramping up. So we'll see if maybe teams are like budging. They were giving the bad options in the beginning, but now as we're getting closer, maybe teams are starting to get desperate, like the Suns and other teams that want to facilitate something. So
please let the people know, where can they find your work at Clutch Sports? Because like I said, you put out great content, and please let the people know where they can find you.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, again, clutchpoints.com. Again, you click on the Heat tab. You'll see all my work there. Twitter, X, at Zach Weinberger, Zach with an H, Weinberger. The same thing on Instagram and Facebook if you want. You'll see all the posts especially from tomorrow night when they face the Trailblazers. I'll be posting all sort of stuff there, live tweeting throughout the game, post-game quotes and videos. Should be a great time. And again, as we kind of progress through the season, the deadline and the end of the season, it's going to be a wild ride. So definitely check, keep sort of tabs on my page and the content.
Guys, so make sure that you go to all his platforms. Make sure that you guys check out some of his reports, some of his videos. Make sure that you guys go to Team to Beat Miami Heat. Make sure that you guys subscribe to his channel. And we're pushing to 6,000 subscribers here. Make sure that you guys like, share, comment, subscribe. And thank you guys for all the support.